Hey everyone, welcome to the Lobster Talks podcast by Lobster Capital, where we celebrate the bold thinkers and innovators driving change in the startup world. I'm your host, Gabriel Jarrison, and today I'm thrilled to have Ankur Rustagi, the founder of first Sero AI and now Saatvy, two different companies pivoting from one to the other. We're going to talk about it. Ankur, thank you so much for being here on the show.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me, Gabriel. Nice to be here.
I'm very excited. We're going to talk today about a lot of things that usually don't get talked about so much. And so for starters, could you introduce yourself and maybe tell us briefly, we're going to go into more details about your startup journey so far.
Hi, I'm Ankur. Nice to be here. So currently I'm working on Saatvy. That's a wellness platform. Prior to this, I was working on Sero AI. And by the way, Sero AI and Saatvy, we are still operating under the same company. It's just like the name evolved because of what we are doing. At Sero AI, we were working on a trust and safety platform. And that's what I basically did for 6-ish years at Facebook and Roblox. At Roblox, I was leading the communication safety team and child safety team, where we detected a lot of abuse. And Roblox, as you know, 50% of the user base is children. So we were helping protect them on our platform. And at Facebook, I worked in various teams like commerce and election safety. My start was in elections, so that was a little bit crazy exposure to trust and safety domain. And prior to that, I was at eBay for about 5 years, where again worked in variety of teams from shopping cart checkout to machine translation. At the time, it was the third largest translation engine. Before AI became cool, we were working on some interesting problems.
Okay, so I believe what we want to focus on today, what we're here to talk about is really pivoting, or at least not everything we're going to talk about, but a lot. So you basically started from your experience at Facebook and Roblox with Sero AI, and at some point, we're going to talk about why decided to drop this idea. But to start the story from the beginning, maybe tell me about the first idea from having the content moderation at Facebook and at Roblox and building Sero. Let's start with the beginning, and then we'll see what went wrong and why you decided to change course.
Yeah, totally. So to start with, that was the only idea I could imagine I can work on at the time. And I remember even when we applied to YC, they usually ask, what's some other idea you would like to work on? And at that time I said, this is the only thing I know. This is the idea. The reason to start was for me, at Roblox, I really got the exposure to third-party applications or software in trust and safety domain. And at the time, we tried quite a few. And even though there were pretty bold claims on how well they are doing, my team was pretty easily beating them by 20-30% margin on precision. And that's not to say that those companies are bad in any way. It is just unless you use the data, fine tune the models on the modalities you have or the data you have, the precision and recall will not be pretty high. And just the truth, and now a lot of people know, even with OpenAI, like LLMs of that many parameters, and they can't even generalize well when you go into domain specificity. And that was the insight that I had, and a lot of companies were not doing that at the time. Even today, only few are doing. So we wanted to cater to that. Like, can we create a platform where companies can bring in their data, train or fine tune the models on their data, and that will give them a much better ROI. And that was the initial goal. And these platforms took me and my teams. In Facebook, there was a central machine learning team. We used that and created platform on that. And still there were like 20-ish engineers working on it. In Roblox also we did it. It took like several years, dozen of engineers. And we thought, can we do better? Can we give this platform on day one so the cost to keep their users safe for the companies is not that high? And that was the goal with the company.
It's a theme I've seen quite often on this podcast and in YC is someone working at a big tech that has a solution that's very, costly to implement, a lot of people, and trying to bring that tech to other players outside of those big tech and bringing it to everyone else. So, and usually I believe it's a good idea. It's a good start. It works. And so that's the starting point. It seems very obvious, very logical. What happened then? You tried, I'm guessing, for several months before realizing it didn't work. What was the issue then?
Yeah. So we spoke to over 40 companies, and our focus was on enterprise and interest and safety. Also, if you like, when we were pitching to VCs for funding as well, they would ask that, is the TAM that big, right? How many customers would you have even? Because in social media or dating apps, the market is very concentrated in maybe dozen if you're talking about dating or e-commerce. But as you go in social media, there's probably like 5 6 players at max, and they have giant teams of their own, so why would they use ours? And the long tail in it will not be able to justify VC level funding. So, but we were of the belief that still we can crack at enterprise level, because a lot of enterprises are not doing great in terms of safety. And now the regulations are coming in. So we were going off of that tailwind, and they're coming in still. So I'll touch on what we realized. So we spoke to about 40-ish customers. We felt there was like consistency in the feedback. They were like struggling with human reviewers. Their machine learning models were not getting updated that frequently to keep their users safe. A lot of times they were not able to tell their C staff how safety is helping their users or bringing in revenue. So there were very consistent patterns. We did end up creating the MVP. But when the sales come, and this was the first time our team was doing sales, so that was a new experience that took a lot of learning. But beyond that, we saw a consistent pattern that we would see interest from a lot of companies. We did initially get a lot of interest, but it was not following up with a letter of intent or design partnerships, and it would fall through. And a couple of times, what we saw was that people, the decision makers, would say, yes, we are interested. But then 2 days after, when whatever, I don't know what was happening inside, but then they would come back and we'll hear that, we'll see once your product is a little bit mature. And I've been in trust and safety domain. I know that that is sort of the last priority in most of the companies. In terms of, even when I was in the companies, we would go ask for specific funding or trying out different projects. They are scrutinized a little bit more because there's just no direct customer impact a lot of times. So it's difficult to explain. And this is my hypothesis, that even though they wanted maybe something like it, it was still very difficult to convince the decision makers that we should spend on something which is a third party SaaS app. And our focus was enterprise, so we were asking a lot of fees as well. And that could have been another reason. But this is my hypothesis. And this was the biggest reason I didn't feel like continuing, because if people inside, and if you speak with a lot of trust and safety folks, they'll tell that convincing C staff about investment in trust and safety is a very difficult thing. And a lot of people have a hard time dealing with within the company. And now I'm trying to influence that from outside the company. And that kind of hit me a little bit. I knew that coming into the market, but like that got me thinking that should I continue? And obviously it had a like us not being able to sell. Now we can excuse all day. It doesn't matter. Eventually we were not able to sell. But when we dig deeper, I think if we were just not able to sell, we would have still continued, right? Like, let's find another route. Let's do something else to make it happen. But when that realization or like that feeling came inside, that for some reason, maybe it is just difficult for the internal team members to convince their subordinates to buy something that they would like to buy, then it's going to be a very difficult journey. And that's when I sort of made the decision that this isn't something that we should continue for a very long time. And it was a very hard one, because you want to continue trying. This is like when you start something like this and you're completely focused on just building this one thing that you really want to build, and that's how you start anything, right? And giving up that when it's just 10 months in was a very difficult decision. I can't explain. There is no 100% conviction in this area, unless otherwise you have just tried it for 4 years and nothing happened. Then maybe you'll be very sure. But I think at some point I didn't want to try that.
It's fascinating. I was going to ask you about how long it took you, and you said 10 months. And it's always this question. I'm sure there's a lot of founders out there right now who are struggling, and maybe they're already in for 10 months or 1 year, 2 years, and they're asking themselves the exact same question. Should I persevere or should I just pivot? And I think what you said is very interesting because you're showing that you don't have 100% certainty. You never have. You can never be sure. Maybe if you had stayed with it, you would have made it work. But at some point, you have to make the decision, and there's no definitive answer. I just want to, I mean, that's my opinion, but I feel you believe the same thing. There's no 100% certainty whether or not it was the right decision. It's about how you felt, it's about your struggles. And to anyone out there who's going through the same struggles, there's something in Silicon Valley that I like very much is fail fast. If you waste 2 years, you don't give another idea a shot. Also, I'm guessing, can you talk about how you felt in terms of energy, in terms of motivation? Like, were you discouraged or did you still have the energy to go after it? Did you already have the new idea in your head, or did you just decide to stop without having the new idea? How did you feel inside, and what was the process internally for you?
Yeah, there were a lot of ideas, and ideally we should have done a soft pivot. But the problem wasn't that we were not able to make the product, or are we making it better, or can we improve the product itself or not. That wasn't the problem. It was all in the sales and the problems we were dealing with during sales process. And several companies are doing amazing. By the way, they have figured out. For us, we went with a notion that we want to sell to enterprises only. And if we don't crack that, then the TAM becomes so small that it's not justifiable for VC funding. And we, with the get-go, we had that very clear that we do not want like 1,000 startups with like high iteration rate and like $1,000 to $1,000 as ARR or average customer value. And that's where I think we sort of had to make that cut. Now, there are some forcing functions, right? If you don't have money in the bank, you'll have to close. Your team is leaving or they don't have conviction there, then you'll have to close. For us, energy wise, I don't think I had any issue with that because I did this for 5 years, building that. And also, I knew what is the end impact, right? Like in Roblox, there were like sometimes we gave leads to government authorities on some like awful activity happening against children. In elections, there were a lot of misinformation that we suppressed in terms of impressions. So there is real life impact. And that's why like we had courage to leave like a big tech job and start something like this, because the end user impact is so huge. Unfortunately, and again, that's my perception. I'm sure everybody's trying to do the best in every company to keep their users safe. But the reality is like if revenue is not coming in, then like doesn't matter how the safe platform is. And I explained already when those things were not aligning, I just didn't feel good about continuing. Having said that, like I was very convinced that a safer platform will bring more revenue to the companies. And when we were starting to think about what should we do, we thought like if we are so convinced and we are telling and preaching everyone that make your platform safer, why don't we go pick any consumer app and then make that safer, like if be it dating, social media. And we thought of that. Social media, again, is a huge giant and something in YC it's called tar pit ideas. So we tried to avoid it. From technology perspective, our team had expertise in ML, AI, building infrastructure. So we still continued to see what we can do in those. And I'm happy to share like some of the things we explored. But at that time, that type of GTM and customer base, I was just not convinced that I can, like after 6-7 months of trying, I will be able to convince customers.
I think your story is fascinating because many pivots are because the founders realize a new opportunity while doing the first one. They see the new shiny thing and they're like, oh, I want to go there. That's not what happened with you. And many pivots happen later on after maybe 18 months, 2 years, and yours was faster. So I'm fascinated by that. It really is a huge conviction by saying, I don't even know what I'm going to go chase, but I'm just stopping this right now. And honestly, I can tell you congratulations, because it takes some guts, it takes some courage to be able to say this early without another plan. And so you talked about not having enough or any more money in the bank. That was not the case for you because you raised some money after YC. How do you have the
Mhm.
conversation with investors, and what did they tell you? Did some of them push
Yeah.
against it? What happened there?
Yeah, so I think from an investor perspective, I think we are blessed to have amazing folks who invested in us. When we did share that we are not going to continue with this, initially we proposed that let us go look into LLM safety because that's like all the buzz is about. And with our experience in safety and machine learning, we thought like we'll be able to figure out something there. So that was the initial idea, and nobody was opposed to it. I remember one of the investors said that if like it does take time, right? Enterprise sales is pretty slow. The cycles are like 9 months long sometimes. So it is okay to like, I mean, wait and try. But if we have conviction, they were very supportive. And so I think we didn't have really deep conversations. I once we decided that we will go into wellness space, at that time few investors did ask like what are you actually trying to do, what will it look like, and only last month we got a little bit more clarity. Initially in April we were just figuring it out what it's going to look like, but I think at pre-seed seed stage people are aware that pivots are going to happen, and most of the investors are counting on the team that they will figure something out. So there wasn't any like deep root cause analysis of what happened, why will it not work, and why will it work this time, something like that. It was just about communicating that what we feel passionate about and what we are trying to do now means more to us, and we will give equal or more amount of effort making it successful.
It's really good to hear. You seem to have very, very good investors that understand. It's important to remind what you just said. So essential. When you're investing in seed or pre seed, you're investing probably more into a team than into a fixed idea.
Mhm.
Pivots happen a lot. And for investors out there, usually pivots are a good thing because there's much more chances to
Mhm.
succeed after a pivot than before. So it's a great
Yeah.
thing. And obviously, you went into a completely different direction. We're gonna get to that in a second about the new. It's so funny because it's so different. Just to finish on the pivot, what was YC's advice? I'm sure you went to them as well. What did they tell you about whether to pivot or not this early?
Yeah. So one thing, even like prior to advice, I think the reason we were able to even figure this out this early was because YC pushed us to go talk to customers very early on. We didn't have anything. We initially created mocks of the product in Figma only. Yeah, so we were showing that to folks, and our customers were giving us feedback, which was great. And when they had conviction, they said, okay, we would like to see it as a functionality. So we built it, right? But that sales process started very early. And then I think it was a great thing that naturally maybe we wouldn't have tried sales because it was our weak point. Technology was our strength. And anytime when that came up, we were able to execute pretty fast. So, like figuring out what our weakness is, working on it. And then that really helped us understand that whether there is demand for this or not. So that was the first thing. But like when we did decide, I think they were pretty supportive. Our group partner, he mentioned, if you believe that it's not going to work out, essentially it's your conviction. But like, as I mentioned, he did said that, it takes time. So like you have to give it time, and but in the end like he left the decision to us and just figure out whether we are convinced about the next direction much more than what we were doing earlier.
And I believe your group partner is Michael Seibel, if I'm not mistaken. That's
Yeah.
an amazing
Yes, Michael
an
is our group
amazing
partner.
group partner to have. And again, it's interesting as an investor's perspective. If you're, I want to reiterate what you just said because you're dropping some gems. If you're much more convinced about the next idea than the previous one, then you should absolutely put your time and
Mhm.
energy to the next one. So let's talk briefly or not briefly, let's talk for as long as we want about the next idea. You decided to go into a completely different direction, which is wellness and chronic pain.
Yeah.
What, like, again, what was the thinking? Can you take us through the process of what happened? How did you stumble into that new
Yeah.
thing? What was your thinking to land on that new idea?
Yeah. So it was not very obvious. We were not going into wellness space, to be honest. Like we started exploring first LLM safety because again, it's like trust and safety area. So we wanted to leverage our expertise and safety experience. But when we did create some models and we benchmark against like some of the other companies, what we realized that it's nowhere close to level that I would want to release anything. It's very easy to hack LLM safety models right now that are like, I won't name any company, but like you can just try any other language. We were able to, like, we saw some of the models on Hugging Face, tried that. To some, we were close to the performance in terms of PR curve, and a few we were able to beat as well. And that doesn't take much time. Like, you can synthetically generate the data. And so, literally, like, you can train LLM safety models within a few weeks. So that was a positive sign. So we started there. But then when we started just figuring out how we can hack, we were like, this is not worth releasing. Like, we'll get burned pretty quickly. And I don't know how other companies are dealing with it. So we thought, like, okay, what is the next level of safety we can provide? And when we started digging, this is some technique that a lot of trust and safety teams use, is that product intervention can really help with making product safer itself. So think that if you abuse or violate policy one time, and I will just naturally not let you try 10 times, or just give you a soft ban or block your account for few days, right? And so those things you can apply, but that really depends on the experience. So we were looking at where we can go deeper and take LLM safety, and then I'll just fast forward through the next phases. So we looked up a few domains. Insurance seemed interesting also because I feel it's ready for disruption. So we started looking into what about application of LLM in insurance space, because AI will come into claims processing and people will be able to bypass that easily. So we started looking into that, sales into insurance, and we didn't have any network and distribution there. And so those burning issues from prior experience sort of influenced us a little bit there. And then when we were just looking at insurance, health insurance was one of the things. And that, while doing just that market analysis, we saw like, why the hell people are spending so much in health insurance just in US, but same thing for Europe. We saw like US itself is spending about $4 trillion a year on healthcare. And we were just shocked. And then the other stat that came about was that about 20, and it's a bit of a like wide range, but I'm not so sure. So just using that. So 20 to 30% of US population have a chronic condition. It's like we're spending so much money, yet close to one fourth of the population is suffering from a chronic condition. So we started digging more and more. And I had a personal experience 5, 6 years ago. I had like an episode of rheumatoid arthritis. And at that time, when I recalled that experience, there was just no explanation why it happens. The treatment is to just suppress pain. It's not about figuring out root cause and maybe reversing that. And so that I got that all those memories back. And I was like, okay, this is the opportunity to do something. So we started looking into alternatives, connected with a few folks, went to a few conferences, and yeah, then saw that Ayurveda might have a way to manage symptoms. And the reason I say manage, in US it's not licensed. So you cannot say treatment, you cannot say it can cure, but it has been used for thousands of years in India. And that's just mind boggling. Like if I say that there is some science that existed for that many years and it is beneficial in today's world, that is not just like easy to absorb. But so I started a course on it, met with amazing practitioners of it in US, tried myself, asked my family members to try it. And once they started seeing benefit, I was like, okay, let's go. And so that's what we're doing now.
It's amazing. I love having the whole path of how you went from LLM safety all the way to like Medicare or health insurance, and then to chronic pain. I know the topic quite well. I also dealt in the past with chronic pain, and um, you're right. It's interesting. Chronic back pain in my case, and the modern medicine doesn't really look for causes; it just looks for treatments. And when treatments fail, that was the case for me, you're left pretty much with nothing. And, so for me, the solution came from a book. It's called The Way Out. And it's about, dealing with chronic pain on your own and in your own head, etc. And the book in itself cured me completely insane after 2 years. So it's a topic that I really relate to. I know that there's a lot of people that deal with chronic pain, a lot of chronic back pain and others, and modern medicine is not really equipped. And of course, you have more Eastern medicines like Chinese medicine, like Ayurveda from India, that are much more used to dealing with this. And like you said, they've been around for millennials. And so let's dive deeper. So that's Saatvy, Saatvy. That's what you're working on now. What are you trying to build? You're trying to find the root cause and deal with it. Are you bringing experts from India, or is it already practitioners in the US? How does it work?
Yeah, so I'll start from the basic part. So we are a wellness platform. And as we discussed, we are focusing on chronic conditions right now. So be it diabetes, IBS, rheumatoid arthritis, and a lot of postpartum conditions as well. So the way we help our customers is by having authentic Ayurvedic practitioners. So we vet them, make sure they have good experience, they have proper degrees, because there's a lot of noise in the space and people see side effects. So we make sure that our practitioners are authentic and experienced. And then we give our customers personalized advice on lifestyle, food, like what their diet should be, and any supplements if needed. And our primary objective is to get the customer off our platform and off of any supplements as soon as possible. And these are some of the values that I wanted in my healthcare providers, right? Why do I have to wait for something to happen? Like if you have initial signals, a lot of times in current setting, they will not intervene at the early onset. They would wait for disaster to happen. And then when, then intervention will happen. Some people might have access, but for the most of the population, that's not the case. So that's how we do it. Now, your other question was like, where are these practitioners coming from? So short answer is they're based in US. And the reason for that is Ayurveda really tries to understand your natural constitution. Explaining that will take quite a bit of time, but think that there is just everybody's unique and they have their own natural constitution. And to understand that, the practitioner really needs to understand your past, what your healthy state looked like. And from that, they understand that. And then if there's a chronic condition or even early onset of that, there is usually some early signs or what Ayurveda calls as imbalances. So then they try to understand imbalance. So that's why our calls are usually 60 to 90 minutes. It's really trying to understand the person. Now, if I bring somebody from India, they might be very experienced. In some cases, it might work. But when you're looking or seeing a lot of customers, you really need the cultural context. And so we are starting to apply technology to break that barrier and reduce that barrier as much as possible. But currently our practitioners have practice already in US, so they understand the culture. And because we are a US focused company right now, eventually we want to expand to Canada and Europe as well. But that's why it is really important that they understand what your balanced state looks like, what your social activity would look like. And that balanced state can be very different for everyone. Like sleeping in India, like kids are sleeping till like around midnight. In US, kids are in bed like by 9 p.m. or if not earlier, right? So that balance really has to be contextual. And that's the reason we are going with a lot of practitioner based in US.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Cultures and balance is interesting. I am an investor in a company called My Yoga Teacher. It's before my YC days, and they're bringing yoga teachers from India on Zoom to teach yoga to Americans. And for yoga, it's much more easier to do that. They actually tried to venture into the chronic pain space as well. I don't think they figured it out. It was too different from yoga for them. But they also tried with experts from India. And so maybe that's one of the reason that it didn't work for the culture. So that's what you pivoted to. That's a couple months ago. I want to touch on the pivot again because it's again topics I believe that are not talking about enough. So I'm really glad we're taking the time to talk about it. About your co-founder, I believe you had a co-founder in the previous business, and he decided to leave, or he decided not to come to the second adventure. How did that happen? How did you manage that? I'm guessing it's not easy to have your co-founder leave. We're talking about the tough topics here. I'm sorry, but I think it's really interesting to get your feedback and your experience on all of it.
Totally. Yeah. So no, Tala and I are still on speaking terms. He calls and checks in on how Saatvy is doing and what are the challenges we have. And even when we were discussing about parting ways, remember we were discussing with one of the group partners, and he said like this is one of the most civil, and like the way we were parting at the point was at a conversational level. It was not like we were not on speaking terms, or there were huge fights or anything. Nothing dramatic happened, which was great. And so Nutala did a lot of amazing work connecting with the customers. Although after a certain point, we figured that we were doing similar things and we were not able to figure out a pattern in which we can independently own certain areas and execute in parallel. And what that meant was a lot of context switching again and again. Like either I would pick up engineering and then he would pick that up, and like he was talking to a few customers and and that was not a very streamlined way to execute. And so when we were trying to debug that what is happening, and I mean, if by the way we were selling, right, then doesn't matter if this was working out or not in that fashion. I think this might have been neglected or covered if top line was moving. But because that was not moving, we tried to debug that what's happening, what will it take for us to go to next level. And during those discussion initially, I mean, it was again not like a snap of a decision. We tried a few things for a month, and then we said that okay, we have to recognize it's not working. We left our jobs to try this out, and if we are not being honest and not giving this a 100% shot, then there's no point. And so when we figured that out, then there were a few discussion about okay, what is the best way? Should we give more time and figure out more patterns in which we can work together, or should we part ways? And at the time we decided that it's best to take a break. Although we were figuring out that okay, if it works out and then we have more focused roles, then maybe he can come back, or if I was leaving I will come back, something like that. But at the time we needed a break, and so we took that. And I'm happy that we did it because it didn't sour our relationship, and we still chat like monthly basis. Now he's in SF, so we'll meet. And so it moved forward in a decent way, I would say. Not ideal, of course, but I think that was the best we could have imagined given that we were separating.
Absolutely. I mean, it's rare that it goes so well. And you probably know that co-founders splitting up is one of the leading cause of startup death or startup stopping. And it's so it's brilliant that it didn't stop you and allowed you to still move forward. Thank you for sharing that story. I think it's, again, important to talk about that. We're near the end of our recording. I want to ask you about the future of Saatvy. What's coming up? What are you excited about? What can you share about Saatvy in the future?
Yeah, so super excited about it. Again, the reason is because of my personal experience. And we did bunch of surveys looking at what people are going through. I think we are a very good alternative. So now our goal is to raise the awareness that Ayurveda is an alternative and a pretty decent alternative. So yeah, just going to voice that the loudest possible. We have already partnered with some amazing practitioners. They sit on the board of Ayurvedic Association in US. We have over 5 customers now, just in a matter of a month since we launched. Very humble startings, but again, like our goal wasn't to go out and get customers. First, we needed to figure out given we are in wellness space, that all the infrastructure is compliant, and then we have the best practitioners that there are in US. Now that we have de-risked that, now we are figuring out how to reach to more customers. And our first customers, we have this medical symptoms questionnaire, because one of the other challenges is that, can Ayurveda be evidence driven? And that is the biggest thing that is lacking right now. I mean, a lot of studies are being published, but we want to push the bar in that perspective, that all our customers, we have a medical questionnaire, and our first customer reduced their symptoms by over 50% just in a matter of 4 weeks. So early promising results, happy to just help. But yeah, if any of your audience is interested, they can reach out to me directly or check out our website.
That's perfect. I was going to ask you, where can listeners stay in touch with you? So can you give Saatvy's website, and then how to stay in touch with you? I don't know if it's email, LinkedIn, Twitter. What's the best way to reach you as well?
Yeah, so best way is directly reach out to me. My email is Ankur, Ankur, at saatvy.com, Saatvy. And you can also go to our website. You'll get a free intake consultation as well. So you can connect over there. And if you want to follow our journey, we are on LinkedIn right now, but we'll publish more social channels. So just wait for those. Probably in a month we'll be there.
That's awesome. Last question I want to ask you, what is a book or a quote that you love and that had a significant impact on your life?
So the book is Gita. It's an Indian mythological book. And one of the quote is that, just focus on the work and don't worry about the outcome. At least that's what I understood for most of my life, the way we learned in my childhood. But recently I rediscovered the meaning of it, which has been a really motivating factor for me during my startup journey. And the new interpretation is that, if your efforts are focused on the right thing, then you will not worry about the outcome. So it was a very powerful difference and very minute interpretation, but yeah, just like completely changed my perspective, how I focus my energy.
I love that. I agree with this so much. Focus on what you can do and not on the outcome, the way I usually think about this. That's absolutely brilliant. Ankur, thank you so much for taking the time to discuss with me today. That was awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much, Gabriel. Really nice chatting with you.
Thank you so much. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe for more conversations like this. And don't forget to rate us and review. Leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time on the Lobster Talks, stay bold, stay curious, and remember, those big ideas start somewhere.